No voters just need to be educated. Let's have a look. Hello everyone, Florian here, and welcome to another episode of HeiseSays. Grab your stein of coffee, and I thought we'd have a look and a little bit of a talk about this article that has appeared, I think, on ABC News that my wife brought to my attention quite angrily. Now, it's the presumption that, well, the yes voters can't cope with the outcome. There is a lot of cope. I'm seeing it in a recent video I did about South Australia still pushing ahead with a vote where someone who got 70 votes can get elected. What does that tell you? There's a lot of cope. A lot of yes voters and yes campaigners are suffering from cognitive dissonance and are trying to reason why people could vote no. And here's one that is quite insulting. We just need to be educated more. We're simpletons. Simpletons, the underlying current of this argument. We need to be educated, shove more stuff into the curriculum to ensure that next time they'll vote yes. Yeah, okay. Because, of course, the presumption here is that those of us that voted no, myself included, obviously just did it due to, we were manipulated by the no campaign with all these lies, and we're too stupid to actually investigate, look into, or perhaps we may have legitimate reasons for limiting the growth of government or arguments against having race-based representative bodies in our political system. But yeah, we can't have that. It's just, we're all too stupid. So we need to bring it in the education. So let's have a look at this one here. Let's look at this article. So, hopeful truth-telling through education will improve the understanding of Indigenous issues after the failed voice referendum. Now, this would imply that we need more education about what's happened to Indigenous people. If we had that education, the voice wouldn't have failed. That's what I see, at least in this title. That's how it reads to me. Now, I would make the argument that if one looked at the history of the treatment of Indigenous Australians, Aboriginals, all throughout Australia, what do you think the greatest cause of a lot of their suffering was? I'll have a shot of coffee and you let me know. Which organisation was vested with the authority to steal their children, to withhold their pay, to discriminate them and restrict their access to the cities? I'm sure a lot of this is almost 100 years ago. Some of these circumstances, some are sadly recent, but it's the government. It's not the average punter. So perhaps we need to not turn to the government to be the solution for the problem that the government creates, but that's an ideological position that most Australians can't seem to square with. So let's have a look at this one here. Since the Voice to Parliament referendum failed last year, Nyikina and Brandy woman Sherry Sibasodo says she needed time to heal. She needed time to heal from... how many people put all their hopes in this thing? I think a lot of people put way too much onto this voice. What do you think's worse? The fact that it lost and they need time to heal, this lady needs time to heal, or the fact that if it had won and then a decade later they would have realized it would have been perhaps another ATSIC, achieved absolutely nothing, full of corruption. She learnt Australians had rejected something Indigenous people had worked so hard to create. I cried the entire next day, she said. It's life. It wasn't just Indigenous people. It was a mix of people too. Now, that's a bit presumptuous. And not all Indigenous people supported the voice. We've seen that in the election results. It's almost like people's political and ideological positions can't be simplified down to their race. Like we're individuals with our own will and desire and goals in life. She was the Kimberley delegate and signator to the Uluru Statement and an advocate for the proposed constitutional recognition and advisory body. Okay, so of course she has a bias here, an incredible bias, which is understandable. If you've ever campaigned for anything politically, been involved in anything, you would be heartbroken once you lose. speaking at the Notre Dame University Null Ungar Research Institute's Talking Head seminar series. She said, after time to heal and reflect, we now need to start to re-educate people and start to embed it in all structures of education. Okay, so no voters need to be re-educated. That's the problem. Oh, yeah. Now, this is my own bugbear. For those of you that aren't aware, we are a homeschooling family, and I'm quite frustrated with the amount of stuff they jam into the curriculum. They just add so much to it. It pads it out. It makes learning much harder. Let's look here. We'll look here. Okay, that's not what I wanted to show. This is what I wanted to show first. This is, I think, grade 2 book of my daughter. One of her what unit was it? English. And you can see here, well, there's Indigenous stories and cultural items all throughout all of their books, all of their education. They just chuck it in here, and it's often not related to what they're learning, but sometimes it is. Okay, cool. Nothing wrong with that. We already have a lot of this stuff in our education system. I would make the argument that our education system is much too bloated, or at least the curriculum that is being pushed on people is much too bloated, and things get lost. I used to make the argument for personal finances. We need to, get it in the curriculum to teach people, and I've stepped away from that now because I appreciate how much is in the curriculum, how little time people have. I would argue that's parents' responsibility, and if you don't know about it, you need to learn. Maybe we need to make everyone has to a requirement that you have to watch, 40 hours of Dave Ramsey. Once you turn 18, what do you reckon? Or before you get a credit card. That's it. Before you get a credit card, you got to watch 100 hours of Dave Ramsey. What do you reckon, guys? So, yeah, no, I wouldn't recommend re-educating people. That's not why the yes vote lost. So, not enough Indigenous education. Which, okay. During debates over the proposed legislation, information and the lack of education about Indigenous issues and how the voice would work were consistently highlighted. Well, that's got nothing to do with education. That's got everything to do with government incompetence and how they were selling this thing. A lot of people don't trust it. They don't trust the government. Can you blame them? Come on. Miss Sebasto said it became a saddening example of how uneducated people were about the history and existing plight of Australia's First Peoples. Well, I would agree with that, to be brutally honest. I think we don't realise. I think a lot of Indigenous people may not appreciate how bad the government has treated them in the past. I don't know why they're calling for more involvement in the government rather than restricting government's involvement in individual lives. And that's why I'll call attention to this book. This is one I suggest everyone reads. I'll put a Amazon affiliate link if you want to support the channel. I'll pin it down below where I think you can get this on your Kindle. Black Lives, Government Lies. This is Queensland. Queensland government departments awash with files on Aboriginal families that were allowed to live, where they work. And yeah, this just shows you how the government treated Aboriginal Australians. It's focused on Queensland, but it's a good entry for everyone to look at. So I'd recommend it if you want to. I remember reading this on the train when I was in university, and it broke my heart, some of the stories I was reading in here. It was horrible. It was really horrible. And yet you've got more people calling for ever encroachment of government on our lives. What do they think? We've suddenly become nicer humans? That shit isn't going to go down again? That problems aren't going to be caused? She said the heartbreaking campaign slogan, "If you don't know, vote no," built and thrived off a lack of awareness. Notice that the no vote also had significantly less funding, significantly less government backing. The government should have sold it better. Albanese did a shit job on this referendum. Australia's faulted education system and lack of Indigenous education meant people misunderstood what we were trying to do in effective change, she said. Or maybe we don't agree with your approach. We don't agree with creating another separate body to just represent selected people. I mean, look at South Australia. Some guy got up with 70 votes. Aboriginal Australians weren't turning up to vote for this. So are they all going to get fined for not voting? Let me know in the comments if you've looked into that. They shouldn't be. You better not be fining them for not voting if they are protesting this by staying away. But it shows you. And unless you have over 50% of the vote, you shouldn't be considered a representative of your region, because you can't be a voice of the people if you don't have the majority voting for you. We need to re-educate people about what is the plight of First Nation peoples in this country and what are our issues. I mean, I started to see some articles appear, truth-telling? And it's an old Aboriginal guy sharing stories from his childhood from the 40s. From the 40s, where he was access to town centres was restricted unfairly for unemployed Aboriginals. And I mean, I've heard the same or similar stories from one of my Sicilian neighbours when he immigrated here over to Australia, where he was controlled, where he could go, what he could do. So this is the sad truth of a lot of countries in the 40s and 50s. And we need to we need to learn about this. It's certainly something we need to learn about in history. I'm just trying to think back to the history I did at high school and primary school. It was all a bit, it was all very PC even back then, friendly and nice. There's this disconnect. It's something many Australians are not aware of, not interested to find out. How many people are interested in history? I bet you most of the people that are advocating for this are only interested in it because it can be used for political power. The average punter doesn't give a shit about history. Come on. Formal education at all levels, primary to tertiary, needed to improve its content, and individuals needed to make an effort to learn about Indigenous issues. Okay, that should be up to the individual. I mean, this is the push. We need to re-educate the no voters. A path to truth-telling. Bachelor Jagera woman, Jodie Bell, who has lived in the Kimberley for more than 3 decades, has said there was still hope for truth-telling even after the failed voice. There is a lot of truth-telling that we have out there, but I'd be skeptical about what's put forward. They'll talk about an incident that happened, maybe a massacre. You want to look at what led to it. These were frontier times. You got Alice Springs there, they were attacked, people were killed. Then they went and tried to capture the people. There's a whole lot of stuff there. You need to dig into it. The Uluru Statement called for a body to supervise the process of agreement making or a treaty and truth-telling between Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people and the federal government. Okay, why do we need a treaty with Australians? Education is obviously another way of truth-telling. They're a little bit one and the same. Miss Bell, an Uluru Dialogue facilitator, said, "How can you go forward when you don't even acknowledge what your country did in the past? Not the country, what the government did in the past." There's a subtle difference there. You've got to understand. It was the state government here in Queensland that was doing it. There's the federal government that was doing it. It was the different states, colonial governments that were doing it. Ms. Bell said an Indigenous curriculum was about teaching factual history, culture, and issues. She said education needed to be created alongside Indigenous Australians and ensure it recognised culture, linguistic, and issues-based diversity within tribes across the country. Oh boy. I mean, how about we focus on reading, writing, and arithmetic among many of our communities in Australia to ensure that groups aren't left behind. So in her final press conference, National Press Club speech, as outgoing Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Social Justice Commissioner June Oscar said, Indigenous issues had fallen silent since the referendum. Yeah, the government was, Albanese was just using you for political points. That's it. Many of us needed time and space, she said. I think as we arise from these places, we've been in quiet contemplation and reflection. We need to come together and have conversations around how do we do this? How do we do what? What about the crime that's happening in Alice Springs, the issues that are going there? A bunch of kids go joyriding and then after a funeral, because one of them dies, they steal a car and go joyriding. Then you got a whole bunch of people smashing up a pub. I think we've got more serious problems. I remember we were working with an Aboriginal Australian, an architect, and we were working together on a proposal for regional housing. And we were addressing all these cultural issues, bringing it all in, and working together. And we had some nice proposals on the table. The locals saying, no, none of that shit matters. We need to focus on this, 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 and this. So I wonder how many people voted no for this because they didn't want to give more power to a small elite. So she said it was now up to individuals, businesses, and formal education systems to ensure awareness grew in the community. Aboriginal people have been doing this for a long time, and we've been knocked back. And what the hell is she talking about? I showed you right here. It is in every school bloody textbook. It is in everything. It exists. Their culture is not hidden. It's not suppressed. Indigenous population has grown significantly here in Australia in recent years. Okay, come on. I think they're just sad they've lost their grasp at political power. We need to get up and start again. Yeah, they've lost their grasp at political power. So let's have a talk about this one. So what do you think, everyone? Do we need to re-educate no voters? Is that so presumptuous? Are you insulted by this? And we need to incorporate more of this stuff in our education system. It's already chockers with so much rubbish. I don't know anymore. Honestly, it feels like you've got a lot of people that are trying to cope with a failed grab for more political power. That's what it is. You tell me. What do you think? Check out that book, Black Lives, Government Lies. I'd recommend you have a look at it. It is a bit of a sad read, to be honest. And in that regards, they're right. We need to look at what the government of previous generations has done to Australians, because that's what's happened. And I would argue maybe we need to look at scaling back government and more individual responsibility and rights. But I'm crazy, that's no one wants that in Australia. It really feels like they don't. Anyway, take care. Have a great day. I'll see you all next time. Bye for now.